He's just standing there, menacingly! Get out of there, SpongeBob! Ouch.
So I watched Halloween Kills a few days ago. By the time I write this review, it'll be the second time that I watched the film, and I have some opinions on it. Primarily, it's a really misguided film. It's a big misstep in what they wanted to do with their new Halloween franchise, and it's really dumb and silly, which is saying a lot for a franchise that has Michael raping his niece as a major plot point.
You know whose baby it is, don't you?
Michael!
The baby is yours, isn't it? Isn't it, Michael?
So let's talk about the good before going into the bad. I think it looks great. I think the kills are cool, and yeah. Let's get to the bad. I don't hate this film like a lot of people do. I just think it's really bland. I've seen some other reviews like Red Letter Media's, and I agree with what's been said lately, but I don't think the film itself is that remarkably bad. It's just more boring, bland bad. I think I rated it a 5 out of 10 on Letterboxd, and the first line in that review is meh, which sums up my feelings pretty nicely. This film suffers from a lack of focus. It has so much shit going on, and it's really, like I said, misguided. It's packed with a bunch of subplots and characters that end up not fucking mattering at all. And ultimately, the film is trying to be grander. I get the sense they wanted to give this film scope by getting the whole town involved. And that probably could have led to some interesting storylines, but the film isn't smart enough for that. They never established these characters, or give them problems or anything to work with. Instead, every character exists to die. The way the legacy characters are introduced in this film is contrived. They all hang out at a bar and talk about their trauma surviving Michael every year. It doesn't make sense. These characters would not be obsessed with Michael Myers. It would be more believable if the other films happened, and I gotta say I'm not a fan of the sequels at all, but it seems like in the context of the movie world, it's not that big a deal even for the survivors of that film. Like, I rewatched the original, and these characters barely interact with Michael for like a minute. Marion is only in the beginning, Tommy and Lindsay only meet Michael near the end, and Lonnie didn't even meet him in the original. They added that here, and it's just really desperate, lame pandering. Now, I actually understand why the town is freaking out, because Michael actually killed a lot of people in the confusingly named Halloween 2018, but the other characters meeting every year in a bar is just really lazy writing. They all have this need to overcome the trauma of surviving Michael Myers, but there's nothing done there. It's embarrassing writing, and I think with a more clever screenwriter, they could have changed it around, and at least make it on how different people deal with trauma, in contrast to how Laurie dealt with it. But instead it takes the lazy route. Now the new characters also had nothing done with them. Like, nothing. That's why I'm not mad at this film. It's just nothing. It's a void, a shapeless thing. It has only one goal, and that's to provide body count and be a bridge to, I guess, the final film. So what I liked about the previous film was the fact it had an arc for Laurie. She actually has needs. She's this paranoid, disillusioned woman who lives in constant fear that Michael will come back and kill her, and that's actually pretty good. She alienates her family, everyone thinks she's a nut job, so when the killings start happening and people realize she was right, she begins to redeem herself with her family. I don't think it's perfect, I don't even think it's really that great, but it's good. People like that film for a reason, because it gave them a story, and there are horror films that do ensembles better. Return of the Living Dead is one. Friday the 13th Part 6 is genuinely a good film, was actually a very similar premise to this film. Jason just wants to go home to Camp Crystal Lake, Michael wants to go back to his house, but notice that in those examples, the film actually has the characters do something. In Return of the Living Dead, we're getting more information about the zombie apocalypse. You learn what the zombies are, and so on.
I thought you said if we destroyed the brain, it'd die.
It worked in the movie!
Well, it ain't working now, Frank.
You mean the movie line?
And in Jason Lives, Tommy Jarvis has an arc, and there's a great dynamic between him and the townsfolk, who are also given a lot more attention. Now, Halloween 2, I'm not a fan of that film, but there were revelations, there was a stronger sense of plot, even if they would ruin the franchise down the line. Here, the film doesn't really have a plot. There's nothing that really happens in it besides Michael wants to go home and stare out his window. Thrilling. Characters talk about him and talk about evil, and it's so repetitive. It's variants of the same speech that Loomis gave in the original film, but dragged out. I think that was a point in Relator Media's review too, and I don't disagree. There are these scenes that try to humanize the characters, but it's not real characterization. There's no arcs. What the characters talk about doesn't actually concern the plot, it's just random characterization, which would be fine if it was actually in the service of the plot. And Laurie is sitting in a hospital bed, just like in Halloween 2. I have a sense that in Halloween Kills, they realized they had the same story on their hands with Halloween 2, but didn't want to go through with it. And I don't blame them, because otherwise it would just be the same film. I think it fails at trying to expand the world of Haddonfield to the community. I noticed a lot of background characters from the first film play a big part in this film, but while I think it's neat, it's also wasted potential. You don't get to know them well before they die, and it comes off more like lip service to death than actual death. Character death is complex, but it's generally a few things. A character's actions.
Look, you must complete the training.
I can't keep the vision out of my head. They're my friends. I gotta help them.
You must not go.
But Han and Leia will die if I don't.
A character's moral views being challenged.
But I don't feel any shame at all. I'm as proud as ever.
Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.
A character's needs and weaknesses.
Worried? Well, about what? I guess about my future.
We don't really get anything like that, and it shows when we get to the hospital scene. We have a really misguided scene about mob justice, and it blows shit. A lot of people talking about this scene focus on the faulty logic of it, but the real problem is it's a lazy and clumsy way to get across a message about mob mentality. It comes out of nowhere. It doesn't have anything to do with Michael. It doesn't forward the plot for what little of it is even in the film. It's just a detour. Ultimately, the message about mob justice is just so shallow and obvious that it comes off as phony. It's another attempt by the filmmakers to add a bit of scale to the franchise and failing. By the end of the film, it just loses momentum. You get more kills, you get more monologues, and it ends. That's the extent of it. So do I think it's the worst Halloween film? It's probably a bit more annoying because it's so repetitive, but I don't think it's god-awful. I think it's a really fucking bland film that looks pretty, but didn't know what to do with itself. It's desperate, it's pathetic, there's no plot momentum, but I would take this over something like Resurrection or Curse of Michael Myers, which are, in my opinion, the worst fucking films in this franchise. Well, happy Halloween. I hope you enjoy yourself by watching some good Halloween movies. This is me, signing off.